So let's get to it. As usual, we have our course page, and here you can find the different courses, and we are now in the object-oriented programming course. We have seen the definition of class, a very practical unit on examples of classes, a unit on advancing programming techniques that we will use also in our code, and now we are in the inheritance lesson. So I have, as usual, downloaded this Jupyter notebook, and I'm going to run it here. In the first part of this notebook, I'm just introducing the RPG character class, and I'm not going to stop at it here. This is some content that we already covered in the previous sessions, so feel free to go and check those. But basically, the concept, the class that we are working with today is the RPG role-playing game character. So this is a class that would work like a automatic character sheet for the characters that we use in a role-playing game. And as you would expect in these cases, each object of my class that I will create as usual with the init method will have a name and some attributes: strength, dexterity, hit points, maximum hit points, and the actual number of hit points that my character has at every moment. So these are the usual attributes that you would expect in a role-playing game character. Because I have these characters, I also get the usual set and get methods. Okay, so actually in this case I don't have the set methods, I only have the get methods, because I decide that my attributes will be set from the start, and they will just I will just access them with get methods. I don't have the set methods that I often have. Whenever I implement a new class, I decide precisely what behavior it will have, and in this case that's the behavior I wanted it to have. So most of my character attributes will be fixed from the init method, but not all of them, because the hit points that I have at each moment will change and will grow whenever I heal. So I will have a heal method, and they will decrease whenever my character is hurt, for example, because it's fighting and it's in combat. It has some other methods, like whether or not my character is dead, that returns a Boolean value, and you can check this out if you want to. And my class is, well, has some, let's say, interesting things, like it does have a class attribute, and remember that we already saw what these are, that basically relates the different die that I can use in my character when I roll different types of situations, and another number that usually stands for the damage that my die roll does. Okay, all of you who are fans of role-playing games, this is very familiar. Those of you who are not, don't worry. Let's say technical things of role-playing, and my class is just modeling them as my classes are supposed to do. Another particularity of this implementation is that I have a static method. So this is a method of my class, but I will not need an object to call it. I usually, whenever I call a class method, I call it via an object, through an object. I write the name of the object, I write a dot, and then I write the method that I want to call. In this case, I will not need this for the combat or for the resolve attack methods. Okay, and these two methods, the combat and the resolve attack methods, will be methods that I will use to simulate fights between my role-playing characters, the big shining hero, knight in shining armor, and we will see a class related to that in a second, fighting the big bad orc or other type of monster. Okay, and we can just begin by defining some object of my class. We just, whenever want to create a new object of a class, write the name of the class, RPG character in this case, and then give the attributes that the init method needs. Whenever I write down the name of the class, I'm actually calling the init method. In this case, I have a self parameter, which is something technical. That means that I'm calling it with an object that in this case I'm creating, because this is a double underscore init magic method, and it has this particularity that whenever I call it like this, mentioning the name of a class and the name of the variable here, this variable will become an object of this class. Okay, and then the rest of parameters are the arguments for the parameters in the init method: the name, the strength, the dexterity, and the hit points. So here, for example, I'm creating an RPG character whose name will be Rando, and we'll have 532, so that will be strength 5, dexterity 3, and only 2 hit points. Okay. And I will have an inner static method that I will use in my combats too. I have defined this object called a guy, this object that will have an RPG character name of Rando, and I have also defined another object called Big Orc, which will have other characteristics. It's stronger, more dexterity, and more hit points than our A guy character. And then I just call the static method. Notice here that I'm using the name of the class and not the name of any of the two objects that I have, to just create a combat between my two variables, my two objects of the RPG character class. Okay, and I can of course run this, and whenever I run it, I get different outcome. Okay, here it's a little bit easier to see. I get different rounds in my combat. You can see exactly how it works here. It has different rounds, and at every round both characters might swing and deal damage to the other, whatever. The usual outcome of this combat is that my poor old Rando character dies, because the orc character has many more hit points and dexterity, and yes, again, Rando dies continuously in this setting. And well, this is just another class example, and I have seen this very fast, but I encourage you to give it a go and quietly look at it, look at the details, send me any doubts that you might have, and then, why not, change the RPG character class and think about how you would make it better and make it your own here. Okay? And now we are ready for some new content. We have an example of a class that we can use, and we want to extend it, override it. We want to create subclasses from it. So this RPG character class is very general, and in my system where I have this automatic character sheet software, for example, I might want to create new classes that are more specific than just the general RPG character. In order to achieve this, to change my system so it allows me to do more things, I'm going to use object-oriented programming inheritance. I'm going to create subclasses. A subclass basically is a way to reuse the code that I already have for my class. So I already have this code that models some characteristics, and now I'm thinking that I want to do something slightly different, but I want to add to that. So in particular, I'm going to define a new subclass, a class that inherits from my original code, and I'm going to change the behavior of my original class a little bit. Maybe I want to add new functionalities, or maybe I want to change the functionality a little bit to show that I have objects with a slightly different characteristics. Okay? Usual example here, imagine you have an animal class and then you want to model differences between the behavior of cats and dogs and dinosaurs and whatever. In this case, I have this RPG character class, and I know that all my RPG characters have some hit points and strength and dexterity and so on and so forth, and they can all do that combat method that I have already implemented. But maybe now I want to model the fact that some RPG characters have special characteristics. For example, some of them are vampires. Okay, vampires are RPG characters, so they have strength and dexterity and so on like everyone else, and they can fight in combat, but they have special characteristics. Okay, and we will see what special characteristics we can model. But in order to do that, to change slightly the behavior of the RPG character class, to create a new class using the characteristics of the RPG character class, we use the inheritance mechanism. And to do that, it's very simple. In order to define a subclass, a child class from my RPG character class, I just need to do this. Class, name of my new class, in this case vampire, and then name of the class that it inherits from, of the class that it usually extends. Okay, this is another way to saying that vampire class extends RPG character class is another way of saying that it inherits from it. In this case, I just need this declaration, and to begin with, I will just have an empty definition. I will just have this pass placeholder word. Okay, so in this case, I will have now two classes in my class tree, in my class world, and they will be basically the same. They will have two different names, RPG character and vampire, but because I have not changed the behavior in any way, they are both exactly the same. They have the same behavior. Okay, and now I already have a new class. I have already used the inheritance mechanism to create a new class, and I can define objects of class vampire. Okay, let's do it here, and I'm doing it the same way. Whenever I call the vampire class, I can call its creator function. Okay, and how does that work? Well, whenever I call the creator of a class, I go to the code of the class and look for an init method. And because it cannot find, Python cannot find it here because there is no code here, Python will just see if this class inherits from someone. So if Python cannot find the behavior it is looking for in this class, it will think, okay, maybe this class is someone's child class. And then maybe I can find the code that I'm looking for there. So when I'm calling the init method, Python will see that it's not here, and it will go to the definition of the RPG character class and find it there, and then call this other method. Okay, so using inheritance places my classes in a class hierarchy and allows me to create new code very fast and very conveniently. I can use both classes. I have not erased in any way the RPG character class. I can still call it, and I can use all the methods that I was using before. Whenever I call one method with one object, in this case this object is of the vampire class, I will first go look for the method in the first class that I have mentioned, in the apparent class for my object. For example, vampire slimes, apparent class is vampire, so when I call get name, I will come here first, and if it's not there, then I will go up the inheritance tree and try to find it somewhere else. Okay, so here we have an example of me using a very simply defined subclass that's not very useful because it just does the same thing that the original class did with another name. Okay, but this is convenient for me to show how this class hierarchy and class tree works. But if that was all that I was going to do, this would not be very useful. So I'm going to now, in the following explanations, see how I can change the behavior of my original class in my subclasses. And I will see two different ways to do that: override and extend.